humid twilight of the city's underbelly was interrupted only by the steady hum of traffic and the distant blare of sirens. In a narrow alley behind a row of shuttered storefronts, a disheveled figure huddled against a cold brick wall. To passers-by, he looked like just another homeless man, tattered clothes, unkempt hair, and eyes that held secrets of a long, difficult journey. But tonight, his ordinary appearance would serve as the perfect mask for an extraordinary truth. Without warning, a black SUV screeched to a halt at the alley's entrance. Two uniformed cops, faces hard and voices gruff, emerged and advanced with predatory precision. "Hey, you!" one bellowed as the man, whose name, unknown to the world, was actually Marcus Mac Jordan, looked up in startled confusion. Before anyone could question what was happening, the officers rifled through his meager belongings. In front of a gathering crowd of indifferent onlookers, they snatched away his few dollars, his worn wallet, and even a faded family photo pinned to his threadbare jacket. "What would you do in this situation?" Rico, one of the corrupt officers, sneered as he tossed the stolen items into the back of the SUV. His colleagues laughed, their jeers echoing off the alley walls as they marched the bewildered, homeless man away. The injustice was raw, and the cruelty undeniable. This wasn't a case of petty theft. It was a deliberate act of abuse of power. As the SUV pulled away into the neon-lit night, murmurs erupted among the bystanders. Some recorded the incident on their phones, others whispered in disbelief. But amid the confusion, a sudden shift in the atmosphere signaled that something was terribly off. From the far end of the alley, almost unnoticed at first, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. Moving with deliberate stealth, a hooded figure stepped into a pool of weak light. His presence was quiet, yet commanding, an aura that suggested he knew far more than he was letting on. The mysterious figure paused, eyes hidden beneath the brim of his hat, and muttered in a low, gravelly tone, "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." His words were barely audible, yet they carried the weight of hidden knowledge and an impending reckoning. In that charged moment, the air felt heavy with unspoken promises and threats. The onlookers exchanged anxious glances as if wondering whether justice might still find a way to right this blatant wrong. Meanwhile, Marcus, though his face now betrayed the shock and pain of his apparent misfortune, remained strangely composed. There was something in the way his eyes narrowed as he watched the cops retreat, a glimmer of determination hidden beneath the guise of vulnerability. In that instant, the true nature of this homeless man was cloaked in mystery. Who was he really? And why did the world mistake him for a destitute vagrant? Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to this channel for more. Just as the last taillights of the corrupt SUV faded into the distance, the hooded figure stepped closer into the light. His gaze locked onto Marcus, and in a voice dripping with both promise and warning, he whispered, "You're about to learn that sometimes the underdog is far more dangerous than he appears." At that very moment, another shadow loomed at the alley's entrance, a second figure whose intent was as obscure as it was ominous. Who are these shadowy watchers, and what secret do they hold about Marcus's true identity? In a cramped, dimly lit cell at the local holding facility, Marcus sat alone on a cold bench, the events of the evening replayed in his mind like a broken record, the injustice, the mocking laughter, and the strange glimmers in his own eyes that hinted at something more. To the world, he was the unfortunate target of corrupt cops. But beneath that worn exterior lay the soul of a man driven by purpose. Marcus wasn't always the downtrodden figure the public now believed him to be. In another life, one cloaked in secrecy and sacrifice, he was an elite undercover FBI agent. Years earlier, he had chosen the lonely path of subterfuge to infiltrate and expose corruption at its core. By adopting the persona of a homeless drifter, he could move unnoticed among the marginalized, gathering intelligence on those who preyed upon society's weakest. Every hardship he endured was part of a plan to dismantle the very networks of abuse he now faced. As the cell door clanged shut behind him, Marcus's mind wandered to his past. Memories of rigorous training, covert operations in hostile environments, and the deep personal cost of his mission surged to the surface. He recalled the countless nights spent in shadows, the sacrifices made to bring criminals to justice, and the promise he'd made to his fallen comrades to protect the innocent at all costs. Outside the cell, the city's pulse quickened. News of a corrupt police unit stealing from a homeless man spread like wildfire on social media. Angry voices rose, demanding accountability and change. Among these voices was that of Elena Morales, a fearless community advocate whose personal battle against police misconduct had earned her a loyal following. Elena was determined to expose the corruption that had once again reared its ugly head, and she saw Marcus's ordeal as a spark that could ignite a broader revolution. Back inside, Marcus's solitude was interrupted by the soft footsteps of a guard. The guard's eyes, however, darted nervously as he passed by, as if he too was aware that something wasn't right. Later that night, in a quiet corner of the cell block, a fellow inmate, a grizzled old man with eyes that had seen too much, leaned in and murmured, "They think they can break you, but sometimes the weakest disguise hides the strongest truth." His words, cryptic as they were, stirred a glimmer of hope in Marcus's heart. But as dawn approached, a new and unexpected twist rattled the fragile calm. In the dim light of early morning, as Elena Morales and a small band of activists gathered outside the detention center, a sleek black car pulled up silently. From its tinted windows, figures in plain clothes stepped out. One of them, a determined-looking woman with sharp eyes, whispered into her radio, "We're in position. The target is secure." The message was intercepted by a rival faction of corrupt insiders who had long been threatened by the possibility of an internal leak. Now they had learned that the very man they thought was a vulnerable homeless drifter was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. At that very moment, a shadowy figure, one of the mysterious watchers from the previous night, appeared at the edge of the protest. His eyes swept over the scene with a mix of disdain and foreknowledge. "They're all going to pay," he muttered under his breath. His presence was both a promise of retribution and a warning. The forces aligned against Marcus were mobilizing, and an unseen adversary was ready to shatter any hope of redemption. Just when it seemed that a fragile alliance was forming among the activists and a hint of justice might be within reach, a distant explosion rocked the detention center's perimeter. The ground trembled and shouts of alarm filled the air as chaos erupted outside. In the midst of the turmoil, a masked operative emerged from the smoke, a figure whose identity was concealed by darkness, but whose intent was unmistakable. "You think your little plan will work?" the operative snarled, his voice echoing with menace. At that pivotal moment, as hope shimmered on the horizon, what new threat has just been unleashed that could shatter Marcus's only chance at exposing the corruption? The chaos outside the detention center escalated into a full-blown riot. Sirens wailed, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and fear. Inside his cell, Marcus felt the ground shake beneath him as the distant sounds of clashing, metal and shouting merged with his own racing heartbeat. The explosion had been the spark that ignited a firestorm of violence, one orchestrated by those who feared his undercover work would expose their darkest secrets. As the situation spiraled out of control, Marcus's calm resolve hardened into a steely determination. He had always known that his mission carried great risk. The deeper he infiltrated the corrupt network, the greater the danger became. Now, with the walls closing in and betrayal lurking in every shadow, there was no turning back. His identity as an undercover FBI agent was no longer a secret. It was a weapon, one he would wield to dismantle the corruption from within. In the ensuing bedlam, an unexpected ally emerged from the crowd, a fellow inmate named Leroy, whose gruff exterior belied a keen sense of loyalty. "Marcus, we've got your back," Leroy rasped, his voice determined despite the chaos around them. For a fleeting moment, Marcus allowed himself to believe that perhaps not everyone in this grim world was against him. But as he prepared to make his next move, a shocking revelation shattered that small glimmer of hope. At a routine transfer between cells, a prison guard, a man Marcus had once trusted, slipped a crumpled note into his hand. The note, scrawled in hurried script, read, "Watch your back. The traitor is closer than you think." Marcus's heart sank as he realized that betrayal might be seeping in from within his own ranks. Could someone he had come to rely on be working for the very corrupt forces he was fighting against? In the midst of this inner turmoil, the riot outside reached a fever pitch. Elena Morales' determined voice could be heard among the clamor as she rallied protesters and demanded accountability. The energy of the crowd was both a beacon of hope and a harbinger of further danger. Amidst the chaos, Marcus's mind raced with the enormity of his predicament. He was trapped between two worlds, one of overt corruption and violence, and another of hidden alliances and secret betrayals. As the dust settled momentarily and a brief lull in the chaos allowed Marcus a moment to collect his thoughts, he realized that his mission had irrevocably changed. No longer could he simply gather intelligence and wait for the right moment. Action was now demanded. He needed to confront the traitor in his midst, expose the conspiracy that had targeted him, and reclaim his identity as a guardian of justice. Before Marcus could formulate a plan, a piercing alarm echoed through the corridors of the detention center. In a heartbeat, the door to his cell burst open. Standing there was a familiar face, Detective Angela Reyes, a trusted FBI operative who had been his partner in the field. Her eyes, filled with urgency and sorrow, locked onto his. "Marcus, we need to move. Now," she commanded. The relief of seeing her was quickly tempered by the realization that her arrival might also signal a deeper betrayal. Whispers among the guards suggested that even Angela might have been compromised. As Detective Reyes grabbed his arm and began to usher him toward a hidden exit, the sound of a gunshot reverberated down the hall. In that heart-stopping moment, Marcus turned to see Leroy collapse to the ground, blood staining his shirt. "No!" Marcus cried out, his voice a mixture of anguish and fury. With his closest ally falling at the worst possible time, will Marcus find the strength to continue his fight? Or has the weight of betrayal finally become too much to bear? In the aftermath of Leroy's tragic fall, the air around the detention center crackled with a dangerous mix of grief and resolve. Marcus, now fully aware that his mission had reached a critical turning point, knew that waiting passively was no longer an option. The corrupt cops, the traitors within, and the unseen adversaries lurking in every shadow had forced his hand. It was time to shift from victim to avenger. With Detective Angela Reyes leading a small band of loyal FBI agents through a labyrinth of hidden corridors and service tunnels, Marcus emerged into the cool night air with a fierce determination burning in his eyes. The city, still reeling from the riot and the explosion, became the backdrop for a covert operation aimed at dismantling the network of corruption once and for all. Drawing on his years of undercover training, Marcus quickly assumed control. "We strike tonight," he announced, his voice low and resolute as he outlined the plan. His objective was clear: expose the corrupt officers who had stolen from him, and, more importantly, uncover the mastermind orchestrating the entire charade. The evidence they had gathered, encrypted messages, stolen documents, and eyewitness accounts, pointed to a conspiracy that reached deep into the ranks of the police department. In a series of daring maneuvers, Marcus and his team infiltrated a known safe house used by the corrupt cops. Under the cover of darkness, they disabled security cameras and bypassed alarms with military precision. The first major blow came when they apprehended a mid-level officer red-handed with incriminating evidence, linking him to the theft and extortion of innocent citizens. Cheers erupted in the hidden command center as the captured officer was forced to reveal details of the larger conspiracy, a false victory that filled Marcus with cautious hope. Yet just as it seemed the tide was turning, a new twist sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Hidden within the stolen files was a dossier implicating not only low-level officers, but also a mysterious figure with close ties to high-ranking officials. The dossier was coded and encrypted, but its implications were unmistakable. The arrest and robbery had been orchestrated to silence a threat that was Marcus himself. Even more alarming was the revelation that the traitor hinted at in the note might be someone within his inner circle, a trusted ally whose loyalty was now in question. As Marcus pored over the documents with steely focus, his phone vibrated with a new message. "This discovery could be your salvation or your undoing." The message was signed only with a symbol, an emblem Marcus recognized from his darkest days in the field. It was a warning from the enemy, a final challenge thrown down in the face of his defiance. The realization hit him hard. The corruption ran deeper than he had ever imagined, and the mastermind behind it all was still at large. But rather than instill fear, this revelation ignited a burning desire for retribution. With no more time to waste, Marcus activated a contingency plan he had been developing in secret, a plan that would expose the entire network in one fell swoop. Before Marcus could set his plan into motion, the safe house's alarm blared unexpectedly. In the ensuing chaos, as agents scrambled to secure their positions, a voice crackled through his earpiece, a voice he had trusted above all others. "Marcus, abort! It's a trap!" The sound of shattering glass and frantic shouts filled the background as the realization set in. The enemy was one step ahead. Could this shocking message be the key to his salvation, or would it spell the beginning of his undoing? At first light, the city was cloaked in an eerie calm, as if holding its breath for the final act of a long, dangerous play. In an abandoned industrial complex on the city's outskirts, Marcus and his loyal team gathered for what would be the ultimate showdown. Every step had led him to this moment, where his undercover identity, his years of sacrifice, and the betrayals he'd endured would finally culminate in a reckoning against corruption. Inside the sprawling, dilapidated warehouse, tension hung thick in the air. The corrupt cops and their shadowy masters had been lured into a trap of their own making. Marcus, no longer the vulnerable homeless man the world had once seen, stood, tall in his tailored FBI jacket, eyes burning with righteous fury. Today he was not just an agent on a mission, he was the embodiment of justice itself. As the enemy forces assembled, the mastermind behind the conspiracy revealed himself. A high-ranking official whose smug confidence masked years of deceit. In a tense standoff amid flickering industrial lights and echoing footsteps, Marcus locked eyes with the man who had orchestrated his humiliation and countless injustices. "You thought you could silence me," Marcus declared, his voice a blend of sorrow and unwavering resolve. "Today, I expose every lie, every betrayal, and every stolen moment of my life." The ensuing confrontation was nothing short of explosive. Gunfire, shouted orders, and the clash of steel filled the cavernous space as Marcus's team engaged the enemy in a high-stakes battle for truth. In the midst of the chaos, every piece of evidence Marcus had painstakingly gathered was broadcast, live to the world, shattering the veneer of invincibility that had long protected the corrupt. For every corrupt cop apprehended, for every secret meeting exposed, a cheer rose from the gathered crowd of activists, journalists, and ordinary citizens hungry for justice. Yet even as the tide of the battle turned in Marcus's favor, a lingering dread remained. The coded dossier and that ominous text message still loomed over him, a constant reminder that the conspiracy's true depths might yet swallow him whole. When the dust finally settled and the mastermind was led away in handcuffs, the atmosphere was heavy with bittersweet victory. Marcus addressed the crowd, his voice echoing with the wisdom of hard-won battles. "What would you have done in my shoes?" he asked, challenging every viewer to reflect on the cost of corruption and the power of standing up for truth. Today, justice has been served, but our fight for integrity is never truly over. As the community began to rebuild, a courier arrived at the steps of the reclaimed industrial complex. In his hand was a sealed envelope bearing the same mysterious emblem that had haunted Marcus's journey. With a steadying breath, Marcus broke the seal and read the chilling message. "This is only the beginning." The words glowed ominously in the early morning light, leaving everyone to wonder what new threats might be on the horizon. As the sun rose higher and bathed the city in a tentative hope, Marcus's gaze lingered on the envelope. The story may be over, but is it really? His eyes seemed to ask. What happens next in the wake of this monumental reckoning? Let us know in the comments.